This painting is an attempt at painting loosely with mixed media, namely watercolor in combination with watercolor brush pens. Is this even possible? You will find out if you watch this video. I got this package of art supplies from the lovely folks at Hippie Crafter, a small business here in the US that produces professional grade art supplies. So let's see what's in there. I got some artist tape. I think I used this one before. It's slightly wider than ½ an inch, which would be perfect for masking the edges on my painting. I got some watercolor paper. It's heavyweight, bright white. We're definitely going to use this in this video. I like the format 11 by 15. I don't like tiny little paper. I think it's very difficult to use. And I got watercolor brush pens, 25 colors. So first thing I'm going to do is test those brush pens because I have an idea for watercolor painting that I will try to enhance with brush pens. It's a liner tool. All my previous attempts at using it were limited to figure sketching, where I used it to draw lines, but now I want to try to create a loose painting, but using brush pens, incorporating brush pens in it. The way I intend to pull it off is I'm thinking I will need to paint shapes with them instead of lines to just add some details to watercolor. I'm working on improving my loose watercolor painting, so I don't want everything surrounded with a defined contour. I want the paint to be flowing and mixing, but at the same time, I want to have some details and I want to create those details with the brush pens. So let's see how this develops. You will see the finished painting at the end of this video, but for now, I need to test those brush pens. When I get a new material, first thing I do is paint a few little samples with it to see how it reacts to water, to paper, and how it interacts with other materials. I really like the number of colors in this set. I get, I would say, 2-3 versions of each primary and secondary colors, plus colors like browns, grays, and a black, which gives me quite a few creative possibilities. They look very bright on paper. I can tell that they're transparent, and we will test their transparency a little bit better in just a minute. For now, I am going to try and see how much I can soften the edges on them. I get a little bit of softening, but not much. And I'm also scrubbing them with the brush a little bit to see if I can lift them. And I cannot lift any color. So they are permanent. I need to keep that in mind when working with them. I will not be able to lift them. And it seems that when I try to spread them, some of them give you more intense pigment than others. Like this green that I'm trying to soften right now, it gives me a pretty good wash of color. I also painted these 3 watercolor squares because I want to test their transparency. And on light watercolor washes, they work really well on this green one. The color is dulled by the green, so I can tell that these colors are very transparent. And on black, I basically, this is not black, this is indigo, but I can tell that they have no coverage. So when I paint, I also need to keep in mind that they will be transparent. I will not be able to cover dark areas with them at all. All right, I understand a lot better what I'm dealing with, my new material that I will incorporate in this painting. Let's do a watercolor wash. I'm going to use the same paper from the same pad. I really like how white it is. I think it will give a lot of luminosity to my watercolor. My only concern is how watercolor will behave if I paint wet on wet with a lot of pigment and water. I'm going to dampen the paper with my soft brush. I will pick up excess water with my paper towels and let's start painting. I'm using this reference photo of some fall leaves, but I also want to, as usual, not follow it to the letter and give it a bit of my own twist and just see how the painting will develop and see what I'm going to get in the end. So I'm throwing in just a nice combination of colors. I use this quite a bit for nature paintings and they always end up looking somehow different, I guess because watercolor paints itself and I allow it to do whatever it wants pretty much in that first wash in the beginning. So some new gamboge, some cobalt blue. I started with some lemon yellow. While I was preparing to paint, I looked at the description of the paper. This is 50% cotton. So I'm really curious to see how this one will react to watercolor washes. I know mixed media will work on it with no problem, but I want to see how watercolors will mix on this surface. I'll tell you the truth, I never tried 50% cotton paper for loose watercolor techniques, so this will be something new for me as well. I'm going to sprinkle some Scarlet Lake just for some additional warmth. The colors mix, but you do not get the same intensity of color as 100% cotton paper would give you. But this paper definitely performs a lot better than wood chip paper, because on wood chip, you know how the colors immediately sink into the fibers and you get all those harsh lines, and sometimes you get a lot of blossoms and you can't move the pigment anymore. The pigment moves and mixes and the colors stay bright and clear. I will just need to add more of it, so that's what I'm going to do with my round brush, and it might actually work out to my advantage because I can add pigment only in certain areas and kind of start working on my painting, distribute those leaves and create kind of a distant illusion of a distant landscape there with a few more brush strokes. I think this looks good. Let's wait for it to dry and see what I'm going to get, what intensity of color I will be able to get when everything is dry. Watercolor lightened quite a bit, but I have those brush pens, even though they're transparent, the colors are pretty intense. So it's probably worked out well that the background is so light. I'm going to grab some oranges, some yellows, some reds, and maybe some purples and greens and start working on my leaves. I didn't draw anything. I want to draw with these brush pens, but like I said, I don't want a contour to surround my leaves. I want to paint shapes to keep my painting expressive and loose. I think it's important to leave some things unsaid and leave them to the viewer's imagination. So that's my lofty goal for this painting. Let's see how it develops. So I'm just going to draw out some of the leaves to give myself a starting point lightly in case I change my mind. Just distribute them all over the painting, and I'm switching colors. I might have chosen way too many colors. I think my drawing, even at this stage, is starting to look too colorful, probably. I will have to do something to unify it. I'm already kind of mentally preparing myself for that. Okay, so these are the leaves. That's where they're going to be approximately. Now I want to draw or paint. I don't know how I should say. Am I drawing or am I painting with the brush pens? I'm going to start creating those leaf shapes. Use some oranges and some reds, and let's try to soften them. The idea is to draw the shapes between the veins on the leaves and to leave the veins as the underlying wash of watercolor. Those brush pens, they go on very intense, but if you try to soften them, they don't give you a lot of colors. So definitely watercolor will need to step in again, and I'm definitely going to go back to watercolor to add some things. These brush pens, the advantage of using them is that I can create really pointy shapes. With a brush, it's sometimes hard to do. I don't know why it is, but when I paint leaves, they need to have, unless they're rounded, but if they're pointy, the end needs to be really pointy. If it doesn't come to a fine point, it doesn't look like a leaf. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I think these brush pens help me to make my leaves look natural. All right, let's keep going through them. Maybe add some veins with my green brush pen. But the center of the leaves and the veins will remain light, even if I give them a little wash of green. I probably want to use cooler color, maybe this lilac or like light or this violet for more distant ones, because I want this one branch to come forward and the rest of them to stay in the background. Need to create the illusion of space here, even on this small scale. This paper is cold press. It has a little bit of texture, and this mixed media technique probably would work pretty nicely on hot press as well. I don't use hot press, so I don't know how it would react to applying a wash like this. If you have used hot press for loose painting, let me know in comments what was your experience. If you recommend it for loose watercolor washes, I will be curious to know. I know that hot press paper works great for any kind of line tool that you want to combine with your watercolor. Okay, it's time to unify my leaves. I am using Holbein's Crimson Lake. I think it's a nice cool red that will create shadows on the leaves, kind of more distant, the leaves that are in the shadow. Maybe use Opera Pink as well, just for variety. So the leaves that I want to be kind of in focus and closer to us are painted with brush pens. They have a lot more texture, a lot more detail, and the ones that are blurry in the distance or in shadow, they are painted with watercolor with cool red. And the next stage will be to add some darks on my painting. Everything looks either light or kind of mid-tone. So just a few daubs of mineral violet to create darker accents. I try to create darker areas, the shadows on the branch. Brush pens, by the way, were great for painting branches in my composition. But first of all, like I said, they're pretty transparent and I want some more intense color, but also I want some larger areas. So I'm also going to use my brush and create a few more darker shadows, maybe some darker leaves in the back of my composition. To finish my painting and add back some highlights to it, I'm going to use some white gouache. We're doing mixed media, right? So let's use yet another material, get it into the mix, and we will see what happens. Let's add a little highlights on the branches. I'm using my dagger brush as usual. When I want to paint smaller details, I think that works great. Maybe highlight the tops of the leaves a little bit. Just go over all the branches, all those clusters of leaves, and add some highlights. Let's make those lines a little thicker. I think that looks actually a lot better. You know, this kind of looks like snow on the branches. I think I just came up with a name for this painting. I'm going to call it The First Snow. This looks like the fall is over and winter came. They're appropriate for some areas right now, but not for where I live in Houston, Texas. We still have summer here. And to enhance that snowfall effect, let's do some splattering. I thinned out gouache with a little more water, and I'm going to sprinkle it on my painting for additional texture. And I think yet another thing I want to try is paint with those brush pens on top of white gouache. I do like that effect. Gouache softens the color actually. The pen mixes with it. I might have to wipe it on a paper towel afterwards, but it's no big deal. So I get those soft tonal variations. And here is my final result. Please let me know in comments what you thought about this technique of watercolor brush pens, something that you would use in combination with watercolor, or you think they're better for just sketching by themselves. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one here on Tammy Rap Studios channel. Help other artists to see this video by liking or sharing it. To see future videos, subscribe and click the bell button to be notified when they're published. Thanks again and stay creative!